Howdy y'all, it's Russell back, and on today's video, well today is June the 19th, 2021. And on today's video, we are working on the 2006 Tundra. Again, we're going to be doing a power steering fluid exchange. Not a flush, an exchange. And it's very easy to do. You only need a couple of things to do on the Toyota. So you can do this pretty much on any vehicle that uses a hydraulic type power steering system, whether it's a Toyota, Honda, it doesn't matter. Obviously with an electric steering, a lot of new cars have electric steering. You don't need to do this because there's no fluid involved. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing the fluid from the reservoir, which is right here on the Tundra, and it uses ATF fluid. All right, so I'm going to be going back with the Amsoil ATF. This is the old bottle, okay? The old bottle says it's the universal transmission fluid. These are the new bottles, and it says multi-vehicle. That's the one you want. If you look in your owner's manual, for whatever you have, but specifically for the Tundra, it uses a Dextron either 2 or 3 spec fluid. Both of these transmission fluids are Dextron 2 or 3 spec. If you have a, like say Honda for instance, it actually uses legitimate power steering fluid, which I think is unique only to the Honda. Use whatever your manual says for you to use for your car, okay? Like the Chevy truck, I can use either automatic transmission fluid or power steering fluid, it doesn't matter. But use whatever you're supposed to use. And don't use automatic transmission fluid if it says power steering fluid, okay? You can damage your system and vice versa. So we're going to be emptying the reservoir with this Mighty Mite. This thing is the most wonderful contraption you will ever use for, well, extracting fluid out of just about anything. So we're going to be emptying that. I went to Lowe's. You can get this at Home Depot. You can get it almost probably anywhere, Ace Hardware. This is just clear tubing. It's 3/8 inch inside diameter. And I got this is called a 3/8 inch barb. All right, so it will connect our hose that we're gonna disconnect here, and it will connect the clear hose just like that. And what we're gonna be doing is we will be pumping the fluid out of the lines, the steering rack, and the pump, but we will not be running the engine. Please do not start the engine and let it pump out, because unlike a transmission, which can handle that if you're doing a fluid exchange, the pump itself is very fragile on power steering systems, and if they run dry, they can damage themselves and self-destruct. And I'm sure that the power steering pump on this Toyota is probably pretty pricey. We're going to be doing it manually. We will lift the vehicle slightly off the ground just so there's no friction with the tires. We won't turn the engine on. We'll just cycle the wheel back and forth, and it will pump the old fluid out as we continue to keep the reservoir full. This is a very simple job. You should be done with this in and out, I'm going to say a half hour. Now, I do this to my vehicles probably once a year, which is so overkill. However, I've never had a power steering system fail, ever. Power steering fluid, just like brake fluid, is not permanent. Brake fluid is cheap because automatic transmission fluid is really cheap. It doesn't take much. We're going to be using maybe 1.5 quarts, maybe 2 quarts at the most. If you don't want to use Amsoil, go get some regular automatic transmission fluid that's spec'd for whatever you're going to use, or power steering fluid, and just change it every year. Okay, if you do that, it will prevent the seals in the rack from drying out. It will take the debris that builds up anytime there's friction with a mechanical device, and it will remove that debris. You'll be able to get it out of there. You could even so much as put a magnifying filter on here. If you want to see how to do that, I did that on the Chevy pickup truck, and that'll pretty much keep this clean forever, as long as you keep that change regularly. I may end up doing that on here at some point, but I don't have one, and I want to go ahead and do this. And yeah, so I'm talking enough. Let's get down to business. All right, so this part is super simple. Make sure that you clean the cap and the area around. You don't want to remove the cap and have dirt to get in there. And this has a nice little dipstick. I don't know why they have that on there, but there's markings on the side. But anyway, I'm going to take my Mighty Mite extractor, and I'm just going to extract this right out of here. If you don't have one of these, you can use a turkey baster. But please, if you do decide to use a turkey baster, do not ever use it for food or basting turkeys ever again. You don't want to contaminate food with the petroleum products. So there's a lot of little nooks and crannies in here. I'm trying to get as much out as I possibly can before I disconnect the hose. See, there's another little divot. Okay. So if you don't want to do an exchange and you want to be really, really, really lazy, you can do this, what I just did, fill it back up with fluid, run the engine for a couple of minutes, cycle the wheel back and forth, or go drive it for a day or so, and do this again, sort of like a drop and fill, drop and fill. I don't want to do that because this is really easy, and you're never going to get all the fluid out of there that you could by doing it the other way, but you could. That's better than doing nothing, of course. So let me show you the hoses, or the hose that I'm going to disconnect here, and how we're going to hook the clear tubing up. All right, so on the Toyota, you have a large hose right here. This large hose goes directly down to the power steering pump. This is the inlet, so the fluid will come out of the reservoir through this large hose into the power steering pump. The pump will pressurize it, and then there is a high pressure hose that goes to the steering rack, and then there is a return high pressure hose, which is this one right here, that goes back into the reservoir. This is the hose that we're going to disconnect. So just take some pliers. Let me open them up a little wider. Slide the clamp off. And then very gently, remember that this reservoir is plastic. Just take this off just like that. Okay? Now, we're going to need to plug this up with something, so you can use a piece of 3/8 inch diameter tubing with maybe a bolt stuck in the back or the end if you want. And what we're going to do is I will take, just put that there real quick. I'm going to take a measure of this hose and just stick this in here like this, okay? And then put this clamp back, and then we'll fill this up. Let me figure out how much length of hose that I actually need to do this, and we will be right back. All right, so here's what I've done. I took the hose that we disconnected. I used our barb fitting, connected it, put the clamp back on the factory end, and then I have this just going into a random bucket. This clamp is just here to keep this hose in the bucket. It's not actually clamping on it itself. I took another piece of 3/8 inch hose that I had. I like using rubber for making plugs, if you will, and just shoved a random bolt in there. Okay? And then what we'll do is I'll go ahead and we'll fill up the reservoir with our transmission fluid. I'm going to fill it pretty much all the way to the top. Now what you do not want to do is you do not want to let this run dry. Okay? Okay, so that's almost all the way to the top. I'm going to put the cap back on. If you don't put the cap on, a lot of times it will squirt a stream up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside the truck. I'm going to turn the steering lock off to the accessory position, but I am not going to start the engine at all. And I've got the vehicle off the ground. I'm not going to get underneath there at all, so there's no need to put jack stands. And I'm just going to turn the steering wheel very slowly all the way to the one side and all the way to the other side. And I will let you guys watch the hose as I'm doing that. Turn it all the way to the right. Very slowly. Then all the way to the left. Okay, I can't see the reservoir. You guys can. So I'm going to actually stand outside the truck and just watch the reservoir. Okay, it's drawn down nicely. Okay, so I'm going to add some more fluid. This has been done before, I think, by my relative that owned this vehicle, because the fluid is pretty good looking. A lot of times, if this has never been done, it'll be really like almost black. So as you can see, when I go all the way to one side, it's a good almost third of it down. Okay, so depending on your system, if you're doing the same truck, you'll get the same results here, but if you're doing a different system, then you will have to keep a closer eye. It's a lot harder on like the Chevy truck I've got, the 89, with that Saginaw pump, because the reservoir, it's metal, you can't see in it. These clear reservoirs are really easy. This would also be easy on a Honda because they usually have clear reservoirs. Well, technically this is not clear, translucent. So obviously if your fluid's really dirty, you can give it a sequence. It turns from the nasty color fluid to the nice clean cherry red color. Okay. You can track how many ounces you use, just a quick gauge. I don't know how much fluid this all has, so. Alright, so I'm going to do one last cycle here, and then we'll call that, actually no, I have one bottle. Let me do one more cycle, so I'll make sure that this is fully filled with Amsoil. Okay, so we will do one last cycle. So, I need one here. I need to get this below level 2. I'm going to do this right here. We're going to mess with that one. So, let's check this up just a little more. Yeah, I'll do that. You know what? I think I can do it without it. Alright, so I'm going to clamp this off here. Get the rest of this fluid out as much as possible. Okay. So, I'm going to pliers. I'm going to take this one first. So now, this fluid looks really good. Before I make a huge giant mess, I'm going to take towel. This is really, I can show you guys if I make a blender, which I did. I'm not putting the hose back before it was below this level. That's right. Alright, so here's the tray. I need to take this plug off. Get this one really fast. So I'm going to just stop it with my finger. Okay, a couple drops lost. That's right. And then, there you go. We just have to take the towel, so you're not forget to put this clamp back on when you have blowouts. Okay, there you go. Thank you very much, and I will look forward to seeing you guys and talking with you in the next video.